My frap is totally melted here.
Nice.
I'm just stirring it. All right, welcome to another fantastic, narcissistical, overbloated edition of This Road Is Mine. I am KARAC HENDRIKS with my son Cohen across the table. Today we're going to be talking about Glenn Gould, and in particular his album. Well, we could talk about the second album too in a little bit. The Goldberg Variations.
I love this.
Yeah. Cohen
so
got
cool.
into this. We got this for him on vinyl. That is definitely a Columbia Records
Yeah,
edition
it says
there.
it.
Yeah. So tell me what you know about Glenn Gould.
I just know, unfortunately, not too much. I read some of his quirks, like that his mother always told him to be able to sing what he plays. So I guess in some recordings you can hear him kind of humming. It was a bad habit he developed. I think he was pretty quirky. He looks pretty quirky. Mm-hmm. I mean, he also looks and plays like a savant, though.
Yeah.
And I think I've already said this, but he's Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He's his favorite Bach interpreter.
Well, yeah, he's a lot of people's favorite Bach interpreter, I think, in a lot of ways. Although I think Simone Dinnerstein has sort of taken his spot now, which is so weird that all these Bach interpreters are part of my world. So when I was a kid, my great-grandma, your great-great-grandma Pearl, was acted in a play about Glenn Gould.
Right.
I can't remember what she probably played his mom, I'm guessing.
That's cool.
Yeah, and like it was just a small town theater production, and I remember going there when we all went to see Grandma play.
Was it just a tribute, or
It was his life story. It was about him, and I don't remember a lot about it. I was pretty young, but so I've always been aware of him and the fact that he was Canadian and that he was world known. And that he was an odd cat, but I never really listened to him much. This type of music is even further removed from jazz for me. I'm not a listener of classical music. I know I should, and I have at times like put it on.
Yeah.
Of course, my Uncle Grant always wanted me to check out Mozart, so I did, and I really did enjoy it. I get what he means because it was more of a. It was the closest thing to pop music that I could find from the connection between classical and pop, if we're going to put labels on it or whatever. And of course, when I was a really young kid, there was a movie called Amadeus about Mozart. Right? So, and of course, the song "Rock Me Amadeus." Do you remember that one? It got some. I can't remember. It's just some one hit wonder from the '80s. Amadeus. So there was a rapper that did "I'm a player." Anyway, yeah. So it's been reappropriated plenty, but cool. But yeah, I'm glad you got into Glenn Gould. So that's he's he's Canadian, which I don't know how much of that even matters. Canadians tend to put our Canadians up, our fellow Canadians up on a pedestal, so we can knock them down often too. But, but yeah, he was pretty quirky by the sounds of it. I actually got most of my Glenn Gould learnings from a comic, like one of those.
Oh, really?
Like they have those big. What do they call those?
Graphic novel?
Yeah, graphic. Yeah. Exactly. I was going to say omnibus, but no, that's when they collect them. A graphic novel, and it was like Glenn Gould, The Life, and it was like a graphic novel, and it still told the story, but it was all in lots of pictures and stuff too.
It's cool, yeah.
But yeah, so it sounds like he was a bit of a hypochondriac, but he obviously had something wrong with him. Like he died at 50 years old or something.
Young, yeah. How did he die?
Well, here let me go to the. I mean, Wiki doesn't lie, does it?
No, I don't think
There are lots of books about him though, for sure.
Yeah.
So
Does
he had a stroke that's paralyzed the left side of his body. It says if you can believe Wiki, evidence of brain damage, and then his father decided that his son should be taken off life support. Interesting.
Wow.
Well, probably because without music there would be no life for him.
That's kind of what I was just thinking.
Yeah, do that to me, by the way, if that ever.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean.
Yeah.
Although if you take the I've got to bring this back to Howard Stern in a sec here, but
sure.
Howard Stern would say, well, no, put me in a frozen, like he doesn't want to be cremated, Howard, right? Because he's
cryogenic.
Yeah, he wants to be cryogenically frozen in case there's something that he has, some ailment, and then they can actually fix him, and then he can come back to life.
That would be cool.
Plus, one of his worst nightmares is being buried alive.
Oh yeah, I mean that would.
Well, it would be pretty bad, like, hey, I'm stuck here, but. You hear the occasional story where like somebody's pronounced dead, and then like a couple days later they're in the morgue and they come back to life.
And that's why they have. I don't know if you've. Like, I don't think they do it anymore, but if you've ever seen like a tombstone with a bell above it, they would bury them with the bells. So if they were still alive, they could ring.
You could ring the bell. Yeah. Yeah. And isn't it? Oh, of course. I was thinking like in New Orleans, because they're below the water table. They bury them above ground, right? Because the water just would push the coffins right up.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he clearly had something. I'm not sure. It seemed like he had everything. Like he was one of those guys where, I have that. I'm sick. But he probably was sick. Plus, the mind can do funny things. If you say you have something, sometimes you end up getting it,
Yeah.
But what a tortured existence. But, he was a very... he's well revered, and I always liked. In a way, it sounds like he was a bit of a rock star, because he's like, "Oh, you don't want me to slouch while I'm playing? No, too bad. I'm gonna get a special bench that my dad built me or whatever, so I can play the way I want to play." And but back to Stern. So his co-host is Robin Quivers, and she's really good friends with Simone Dinnerstein, who is the new kind of the best Bach interpreter apparently in the world now, since Glenn died or whatever. Cool. I don't know. She did an album with Tift Merritt. Tift's a singer-songwriter, kind of Americana, like folkish, but she did this one album. It's really cool. Yeah, it was like just piano and voice. Tift's a great singer as well, and wrote all these songs, and then Simone played really nice piano. It was a nice listen. Yeah, it was better than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is iconic apparently. I don't know a lot about interpreting this stuff, but I think a lot of times when things were orchestrated for, let's say, like an orchestra, and then if you play them all on one instrument, there's choices that are made. Maybe what else do you know anything about that, or maybe the liner notes say some of that stuff?
Yeah, that's true. This is something I actually haven't dug a whole lot into. I just really enjoy listening to it, Mom's friend gave me some books. I just like learning classical music and listening to it, and just kind of looking at it. The sight reading, and and then you play it and you say, oh, okay, so I guess studying it.
And I'm glad you do, because like I had no time for it when I was younger. So I wanted to, but I could not bring myself.
No,
to
yeah.
I was too busy learning Alabama and
yeah. Well, I think it's fun, especially because it's kind of esoteric, at least where we're at. Yeah. Like, I don't think anybody's doing this in their garage right now, which makes it all the much better.
Yeah, not likely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting though, like his story, like it's almost like you couldn't write it well enough, where I think this was his first album too, was it not?
I mean, he has so much stuff. I listened to this when we had Amazon Music.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, he has so much stuff that I like. I listened to this, my mind was blown. I listened to I think I listened to him do, because he's done lots. I listened to him do Mozart.
Yeah.
I think he's even done some Beethoven.
I would imagine.
Because I mean, like, I like his interpretations, and my favorite classical piece is Moonlight Sonata. Which actually, to bring to the Beatles, John Lennon was inspired by that piece when Yoko was playing it, and he said play it backwards.
Yeah, she probably could. Yeah, she's a talented lady.
Yeah, and so they used that, and it was cleared, I think. But she didn't just play it backwards. It was like a reharmonization of it. Yeah. But he was inspired for one of their songs, I think.
Yeah, very cool.
But yeah, I don't know. He has so much stuff that it could be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no. It was his first. And but the thing I found so interesting is, sans any posthumous albums, the last recording was his last. He did a version of Goldberg Variations again right before he died.
Okay.
And it came out like just before he died. So I always found that really interesting. Like, wow, like could you have even planned that? Yeah, absolutely. It was I think it was a digital recording. Like it was in the early 80s. Yeah, 82 is when he died. So there actually, if I recall, was a version on vinyl that I could have got you, but I think it was only on CD, where it had both. Oh, okay. But you can get the other one on vinyl as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, from 55 to 81, he did another version of Goldberg Variations, and then he died. So, it's kind of hard to believe. That seems to be his legacy anyway. He was the inimitable Bach interpreter or whatever. So.
Yeah, and it's really good. And it's also kind of hard to separate his playing from the brilliance of the composition as well.
Well, that's true too. Yeah,
a little difficult because I mean, some of the pieces are just amazing. I mean, not only the time it would take to learn the pieces, not only to reach the skill level to be able to play them, but to actually learn them and interpret them. But then also you have to think about like the fact that someone even longer ago than this actually composed it. And I think it's really interesting to see where they were at. And even like, I mean, I just think it's really interesting to see stuff like that when they're so ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I wonder if they like roll in their grave when they think that we're rhyming like suntan and beer can. Like, do they think about maybe just cremate them so they don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were the storytellers of their times with, telling a story with musical arcs without words, of course, right? But very inspiring stuff. Yeah, I'm glad you're digging into this, and I'm sure you'll get into a bit more of it. I mean, because compositionally, these are the standards, right? They in the Western world, at least.
Well, another reason I wanted to get into classical, not only because it's, I think like the one genre that I need to get into that I really haven't, at least not in a long time, is funk.
Oh, geez. Well, that won't take long, but you'll get there. Yeah.
Like, because I remember when I was in fourth grade, I got into the Meters.
Yeah.
And they have some killer tracks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it was something about Led Zeppelin we were watching, I think, and John Paul Jones was a fan of them. So I was like, oh, well, if he's a fan of them. Yeah. And that's when I listened to like his solo albums.
Were they any good? I can't even remember.
I mean, I was like 9, so I don't remember, but probably. I remember I think it was called The Thunder Thief, and it was like a picture of a penguin. Oh, it was really cool.
Yeah, I never did check out his stuff.
Yeah, but I was like, oh, well, if he's into that, then I might as well check it out. And I really liked some of their stuff. But
I love the whole New Orleans vibe.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
But yeah, he was into Bach or like.
Where I was going with that was where was I going with that? Oh no, the reason I got into classical.
Right.
I strayed to funk, but the reason I got into classical as well is because there's a lot of songs I think that in the Western world. Occidental world, bring back that.
Yes, I've heard about that. Yes,
was we know them and we hear them and we know they're classical, but we don't know what they are. And I'm like on a mission to find every single one. And whenever I think I've got them all, I'm like, okay, I know all these famous classical pieces that no one knows by name. I'll hear another one. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. Well, because they were marked like often there would be. Like Opus 1, something. Like,
though I do need to learn how the names of classical songs work, especially because I think a lot of them are in other languages.
Well, it's Latin references, if I recall, for like how they title them and things.
Oh yeah, like Nocturne 72, OP1. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Well, that's Opus. Yeah, OP is Opus. Yeah. It's the original, right? So it's OG if you're gonna dig into proper music. Theory and education and all that.
I mean, I think it's so cool. Like actually yesterday I was just looking at the sheet music for Moonlight Sonata and kind of, playing it and seeing what's going on with it. And that one's always fascinated me musically too, because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
But looking at what's going on in the piece, it's like did he know that he was playing like a first inversion triad and then stepping up to a second inversion triad? Like, did he know what he was doing, or was he just playing and to think that's been studied for so long is like,
well, it's a language in a way, right? It's not language in you know what I mean. It's a way of written.
Yeah,
you're
definitely.
documenting things. I would assume that a lot of it was trial and error. They would learn certain fundamentals, and then they would just try things, and then go after the fact, maybe marking them down.
Yeah,
because again, most of those terms that we talk about with modes and inversions and all that's more for musicians to speak to other musicians.
Yeah, exactly.
So that we can get our ideas across quicker and make the the interpretation.
But it's kind of. Just thinking like did he know that he was playing? Well, I was learning it in C sharp minor, so like, did he know that he was playing a second inversion C sharp minor triad, and then going to like a D major second inversion triad? Like, was he consciously thinking, I'm going to play the third scale degree, the first scale degree, or the fifth scale degree, first scale degree, third scale degree in that order, because it will sound a different way than if I just play it diatonically?
Well, I think a lot of it was probably trial and error, because I mean, you hear about them spending like months creating these things, and it's still happening. Like, people are still making this sort of music now, albeit probably not as much, but
well, I just listened to a Steve Vai interview, because there's like the guitar power, like there's a Satch Petrucci, something like that. But I was also listening to the Steve Vai one, and he was talking about how he was like, he plays some weird chord, and he's like, I can fill your brain up with so much information about this chord. He's like, I can tell you this is like a minor major 7 with a 6 and a blah 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 and whatever. He's like, but that doesn't matter,
right?
And he's like, what matters is how it sounds, and you want to learn it because you need to kind of meditate on it. And if you're in a situation where you think, oh yeah, that chord sounded really good and it made me feel this way, you can pull it out of your arsenal in that way, which is really important.
And it's so funny because I can totally relate to the way he just said that in my own way. Like, if you're on a show and you're doing something and you have space to improvise somewhat, you're drawing on experiences and feelings of how you heard and how it made you feel if you did learn it yourself, and then you do that, and that can also include like turning on this pedal, trying this pickup, holding a note for this long, or adding delay to this section. It's all improvisation ultimately, and it's musical improvisation. And I'm glad you mentioned Steve Vai, because that one key plot point in the movie Crossroads, when he's doing the guitar duel against the guy that can't even fight karate, let alone play guitar, Ralph Macchio. But then he can't really beat him, so then he starts doing the classical runs.
Right.
Yeah, that's like when because he had learned how to play proper classical music when he was a kid, and then he wanted to get the blues, right?
Of course,
it all came around. But it was a really cool. It almost made like nerds, musical nerds, kind of like the superhero just for a little bit, right? Because like that's why he beat the devil, is because he could pull out that.
Well, a lot of it's like Yngwie, just arpeggios from hell.
And they are. Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah.
Which is like, you can write a whole song, just pick a chord that you don't normally play, arpeggiate it, and you might have a song. Like I was just doing yesterday, the Stranger Things theme song and the X-Files theme song. It's just a minor arpeggio with a flat 6. That's all it is. It's super simple. And again, like saying that to someone, you're just using your esoteric knowledge and trying to sound like a know-it-all. But if you know how that sounds, you can use it, and that's what's important.
Well, and ultimately it helps you in efficiency, I think, right? So you can, a lot of us, like me, you might stumble on it at some point, or if you have a enough experience and if you're interested enough and like passionate enough, you'll find these things too. But if you're an expert, basically, or if you're an advanced player, you can draw on those things very quickly. And that's actually the ultimate in studio work, like is the ability to create compelling parts that support the song and do it quickly and do it properly and do it accurately, not fumbling and freaking and trying to find it. You don't have time for that. That's why definitely. Even when I recorded my last stuff, brought in Russell Broom, because in Calgary, like he's going to come up with the best parts, he's going to play them the best, and then I can learn them and play them live.
There you go.
I could have come up with some stuff too, but it likely wouldn't have been as good. So so that's it's all part of that journey. And there's also if we trying to bring it to a social studies aspect, the concept of industrialization, right? So specialization of labor is a big thing. So if you're good at something, you just do that, and you do that really well. Music can be a little bit like that too. So I'm a really good studio drummer, therefore I'm going to just do that in this city. I'm going to make myself known as that, and then therefore I am the quickest, I am the cheapest, and and you're going to get really good stuff. That being said, their creativity though kind of goes counter and says, okay, yeah, but what if I want to do that? Some of the best drumming on rock and roll records in the 70s was done by Stevie Wonder.
Oh yeah,
because he just had this natural vibe and this cool swing.
Yeah.
He didn't do drum on all of his stuff, but some of the stuff he did. Same with Paul McCartney. He, Ringo wasn't even the best drummer in the Beatles.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
but he's still Ringo's star. But it's so there is there's always that yin and yang to it. But yeah, excellence is something that people strive for, and in an orchestra too. With a composition like this, you've got a first, second, third, fourth flute players over there, and they're going to play these notes over here, and filling up the spectrum, and it's music's a really cool thing. It's the creations of it. So have you checked out any other sort of quote unquote classical pieces or non-popular?
Well, there's quite, and again, a lot of it's not in English. There's in music theory, there's what the fuck? What's that chord called? There's like a chord. I think it's called like the Misty chord.
Okay.
And I basically there's, I mean, as I'm learning about different scales and things, like there's the song Ave Maria. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like kind of actually like I kind of check out stuff like that. Like that's probably what I would consider a popular one. Yeah. And there's actually a really cool story behind that song. I'm pretty sure it's that song where there's a scale called the Enigmatic Scale, and it's super bizarre. And it was posted in a newspaper when that song was written, and it was almost a challenge to musical enthusiasts to write a song that sounds good using this scale because it's so bizarre. And that was the song that was written.
Really?
Yeah, and Joe Satriani wrote a song using that scale. I don't remember what it's called.
What's so unique about that scale in particular?
I don't remember the exact intervals, but it has the sharp 4, which is the tritone, and probably like an augmented fifth. It's just it's super wacky and doesn't sound like it should work.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was like a challenge, and you could fact check me. Anyone can. I might be wrong about
Can't
that
be bothered.
song, but
no, nobody cares. Nobody's listening. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But so like kind of delving in from there. So like learning about there's like a 20-minute long Russian classical composition, something about fire that I got into because there's like a whole core based around it. And is it Chopin?
Chopin,
he's got some really cool stuff.
I think my grandma was into Chopin quite a bit.
Yeah, he seems to be the one. Of course, they talk about Beethoven, like the big three: Beethoven, Mozart, Bach. But he seems to be like, as soon as I scratch the surface of classical, it's all him. Like he's got so much stuff, and it's for good reason. It's really good stuff.
Yeah.
For I guess modern. Classical, classical.
Like in the 19th century kind of?
Yeah. Well, and even like, I think if you think of like movie soundtracks.
Well, yeah, I was going to get to some of that, hopefully,
like the soundtrack to the movie Up.
Okay.
It was like so good.
Interesting. Okay.
Philip Glass, I think I've talked about before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, there's so many of those names too. And the movie guys, like I was thinking, I don't is it Vangelis or Vangelis that did Chariots of Fire?
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, like he was a Greek guy.
Well, and there's like in the Hall of the Mountain Lion or something like that, which is again, it's one you hear it and you know exactly what it is.
Yeah,
that's total movie thing. And what was I was just gonna say. Oh, and I also got into Scott Joplin, which I don't know if you consider that classical.
Well, that's
very
more stride piano.
Based.
Yeah. I mean, but they're still instrumental composers, right? So I mean, there's still a lineage through that vaudevillian, element too. Yeah, around that time. Another guy that was kind of on the fringe that I got into is Steve Reich. He did actually. I think he did an album with Matheny. I think that's why I got into him.
Okay.
Or I'm at least aware of him. He did what was that album called? I'll have to find it. Something about a train. let's see if I can find it here. Different Trains, Electric Counterpoint. Yeah, it was with Pat Metheny. Yeah,
Okay.
it was. It was Kronos Quartet. Yeah, so that. Yeah, just and his stuff, if I recall, was a little bit more. Like dissonant, kind of like just not pleasing. Let's put it that way. Challenging.
Yeah.
At times.
Yeah, I really like symphonies. Like there's that. Actually, we will do a podcast when that Pain of Salvation album comes in, because that's the one where they hired, I think it's the Symphony of Eternity or Symphony of Destruction or some total prog name like that. But yeah, it's like a big, like an orchestra that Daniel hired to play. And of course, like he composes that shit, but sure. it sounds perfect for the orchestra.
Yeah.
If it depends on what you consider classical, if you're considering it in the time or the style.
Yeah, it's a style, I think, technically, like at least according to the Grammys, right? Like the Academy of Recording Arts or whatever.
Yeah.
They basically delineate between classical and non-classical. I mean, of course, most attention gets paid to non-classical because that's popular music, but they still call it classical or non-classical, and there's still new things that come through the classical world every year.
There's also an orchestra, a huge orchestra called. Actually, I can't remember their name. Their whole thing is they do a symphonic tribute to Dream Theater.
Oh,
so because Dream Theater's compositions are amazing, so they do whole symphonies, and they actually did a tribute to Haken, which was amazing to see. You can look it up on YouTube. It's really cool.
Well, I mean, and it's kind of full circle, isn't it? It kind of brings back these bands that were influenced by this stuff somewhat, and then brings it right back to the roots
and it makes sense when you think like the band members of Haken reference a play from like the golden age of Spain or something, and some like underground unknown playwright, and they take from a play, which I assume they probably some music around that time that they explore, and then that would influence their compositions, which when orchestrated with proper quote unquote proper instruments that might be more suitable, that you would think anyways, instead of guitars and drums and whatever, we'll use strings like violins and timpanis or whatever.
Well, that's how it should be, right? I mean,
and I think it's cool to see both. I love the there's a 22-minute long song at the end of that album, and somebody called it the Bohemian Rhapsody of Prague, and I was like, yeah, that's totally it.
Yeah,
well, it's like, and even there's probably a cool version of Bohemian Rhapsody done in a classical style that's
probably
totally
because
suitable.
If you think of the frequencies that the vocals were doing, you could put those in certain strings. Like you even would have learned a little bit of this through like just grade school band, right? I mean, those concepts, you're introduced to those quite young. Like when your band teacher is like getting the timpani, he's going to turn up, and then we're going to have these strings over here to play a little louder because they're violin versus
and
cello.
Everybody wanted the loud instruments.
Well,
and,
sure,
the gong, and
they always put the quieter instruments up front because they have to be there, or at least on one side. And there's a whole art to that.
Yeah,
and the thing that kind of trips me out too, if you start like going down the existential rabbit hole, is the advent of synthesizers, right? Were ultimately invented to mimic or somewhat mimic orchestras, right? Because you can't travel with an orchestra all the time. So, look, I've got this big giant. Like if you've seen early pictures of Emerson, Lake and Palmer or whatever, and they had all of those modular synthesizers, and they had all these cords hanging from them. There's a really good documentary called "I Dream of Wires," and it's all about the inventions of synthesizers. And
that's cool, yeah.
And you mentioned Stranger Things, and that made me think about how, like, because that's where those new compositions for like new movies. There's a certain type of sound that is even creepier than like. If you think of like an Alfred Hitchcock movie where they were using like very like or when Jaws like so the notes are very close to each other and it's almost vibrato but it's not.
Jaws and there's a lot
and the what's the TV show, The Twilight Zone, with the stabbing and they're those stabs from violins that are very high pitched.
Yes.
But then when synthesizers came in and they do that really I don't know how to describe it, but it's creepy to me. Like it's like they used it in the other band, Tangerine Dream.
Oh yeah, I have one of their CDs.
Yeah, very cool because they did all of those, or a good chunk of those horror movies, right, from the 80s
Right.
and stuff, or 70s and 80s, and that was all like synthesizers. So there's a creepy quality to those sounds that they get. They're not able to hit certain frequencies, so they almost get a distortion, and it's you could never get that sound from an orchestra.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of times you can, but often you can't, right? So it becomes a whole new tool in itself.
Yeah,
which I think is really cool. And there's no, and even Giorgio Moroder, like he did a lot of those early. He became more of a disco guy, but and in the 80s too. But he was all about the synthesizers too.
Okay, yeah.
And that's where, of course, electric drums came in too, right? It was all like new technology, sort of mimicking older instruments, but then in the process creating all new sounds all on their own. What was the early one? What was the thing that Strawberry Fields Forever?
I don't remember.
That John Lennon used. It was they were actually recordings of actual stringed instruments. Like,
okay.
But then they would be looped, and then you would play them, and the tape would play the sound. They were kind of wobbly, warbly, and again, that created a whole sound on its own too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's
looking at how movies are composed, like John Williams is a good study.
Well, sure, yeah, very traditional, in my opinion. Like, he wasn't experimental, but he was so important, right? Like, Danny Elfman did. I was big on just because he did the Batman movies when I was younger.
Oh, okay, yeah. That would be cool. And learning about John Williams brings in a lot of cool, very weird and almost hypocritical things in theory of music, because one of his big tricks is using the Lydian mode, which is just it's natural major scale with a sharpened fourth degree.
Yeah.
So it's very, very simple, but that fourth degree is a tritone. Mm-hmm. And I think on one of the early episodes I talked about that they called it, and I don't actually know if this is true. I think somebody might have debunked this, but they called it like the devil's note because it's so jarring. Yeah. So in lower registers, it's literally the devil's note, but in high registers, they actually call it like angelic.
Yeah.
Which is so,
it
seems so
thing,
hypocritical.
Yeah.
Like using the Lydian triad, which is just like 1 sharp 4 5.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin uses it actually in Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
Which is like it's just such a weird. It's a cool study though.
Well, sure, because
it's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it's the thirds and the sevenths that seem to dictate certain feelings or vibes. But when you start monkeying with the fourths and the fifths.
Yeah, because those are your perfect.
Yeah.
They actually, and even when I do my ear training, and Chris said that this is a common thing. I think he experienced this too, is confusing octaves with perfect fifths. Which
really?
seems I have that problem. I mean I've kind of learned how to do it, but for some reason it's just so, I don't know, there's something about that. It's very interesting though.
Well, for sure. Yeah, and there is no end to the studying of it and the use of it in creating new journeys and
and actually I was trying to learn I was learning our national anthem.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, and we actually do a little Lydian thing. I don't think you'd call it Lydian, but it goes to a sharp 4.
Well, we have technically kind of a key change, right? Because we go to the major 2.
Do we?
Or that's how, like that's how I view it anyway, isn't it? There's sort of a key change, and then it goes back. I don't know.
Well, I guess it would. Yeah, that's that would be it. Yeah, because the sharp 4 would make.
Yeah, it becomes the new third. But that's just always how I thought of it. I don't know if it was composed that way or not, but
because it goes to the sharp 4 on the something patriot love.
Yeah,
that part, because there is a bit of tension.
Yeah,
but besides that, it's just completely major.
It all to me it always felt like it was it is technically a key change if you want to use stay in the same mode, I guess. But then it resolves back to the original. So there's a couple different ways you could look at that.
Yeah,
But
and that's another.
I always found it odd that it happens right away in our theme song.
Yeah,
too. It's like, oh, okay, there's the payoff, right? Okay, right there.
And then I think the rest of it's pretty standard.
It is, yeah. To me, it's right up there with Happy Birthday. Have we talked about Happy Birthday yet?
No.
There was it was either a video or an audio thing I listened to about basically how it is. It was like the case for getting rid of that song because it's awful.
Yeah,
It's hard to sing. It's not musical. Like nobody can sing it. That's partly the problem. Like when there's those big octave jumps, like it's like, why do we make everyone
really
sing that?
Thought about it. Yeah,
It's really bad. Yeah, that's
that'd be fun.
like, why can't we just sing "Birthday" by the Beatles and just get it over with?
True, yeah.
Like,
Or Dan Baird.
well, yeah, that's way
In a
funkier.
perfect world.
Yeah, were we talking about funk in this one? Yeah. Oh, because of John Paul Jones. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the Meters is probably, in my opinion, funky as it gets, but it gets wackier if you go down the Parliament Funkadelic side of things, because that's where a lot of the '90s rap samples came from.
Right.
So.
I have gotten to a bit of funk, I guess.
Like
from,
Bootsy, do you know Bootsy Collins, the bass player?
I know the name, yeah.
Yeah, he's almost more iconic just because of his image. He always had the big giant glasses and the platform boots and stuff. And then of course, like Prince was kind of the ultimate combo of like funk and rock, and he was making his own gravy too.
Well, and that kind of makes me think of like modern funk and jazz, with like jazz being Kamasi Washington.
Oh yeah,
which I haven't checked out yet, but then Thundercat's pretty funky.
Oh yeah, though they're on the same albums. Too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But they're squarely jazz in my opinion. Like they have funk elements, but funk is more about the groove, and funk really was the predecessor to disco in a way, right? Disco became a meme, but like early disco was just killer R&B. It was really awesome. But then they started like putting it to a metronome, and then it lost a lot of its soul. But funk, is kind of there's a push and a pull in the swing of it. And so the Meters, of course, they had the New Orleans side of things. Art Neville was in that, the Neville brothers. So if you go down the rabbit hole there, that is really cool. And of course, Little Feat was funky as hell, but they had no connection to any of that. I always thought but they stole a lot of stuff from Alan Toussaint, which they used.
I think we have talked about him before.
Well, yeah, because that song "On Your Way Down" on Dixie Chicken is an Alan Toussaint song, and he was from New Orleans. He was like the kind of the preeminent composer of that era. Dr. John. I mean, there's a lot of, and those are just the famous ones. But then there's plenty underneath the surface too. There's a real uniqueness to that. But that really weird funk. You'll even hear it on like the '70s channel on the Sat Radio or something. Like we want the funk.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of funky stuff.
But there's also and then '80s funk got a little more sterile, quote unquote, because there was more synthesizers and the digital recordings were starting to come in, and they were still funky, but it just not quite as rockin'. Like it was a little more dry. Like even if you listen to some of the way that like Prince, like 1999, how it's so. It's really like stiff almost. Yeah. But it's what makes it funky is his guitar playing. It's all in that right hand stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Guthrie's really good at that.
Oh yeah. Well, of course he can do anything.
Oh yeah. In particular, he does have some really cool videos of him doing 30-second.
Oh my God! Well, I'm sure he's amazing.
64s, 128s.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants.
Like that,
and you got into Maroon 5 a bit, which I know could be a punchline to a joke if you're not careful. But
no, definitely.
To me, their second record was as good as anything.
I still preferred Songs About Jane over whatever the second one was called. It won't be soon before long.
It won't soon. And then Hands All Over was number 3 or number
I didn't
4?
make it past.
It was good. Yeah,
not for lack of not liking it. I really enjoyed them, especially the first one. I think like that's another one that sounds super raw, like the drums in what's the first song?
Well, Harder to Breathe.
Yes, yeah. Just like the perfect intro to an album and a song in general. It's like the kind of has that.
Yeah, well, the snares are really tight. Yeah. And he stole all that, and he admitted it.
Oh, really?
Look up Jamiroquai.
Okay, I'll have to do that.
Because that was some 90s funk right there. Yeah, and, remember the song that Napoleon Dynamite dances to at the end?
Oh no, I don't.
That's
I remember
Jamiroquai,
the
yeah.
scene. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a couple hits in the 90s, like over here, but they were a lot bigger, I think, in England and Europe. But, but yeah, he basically admitted to ripping them off. And listen closely to the song on the second record. What's it? I Won't Go Home Without You or whatever. I won't go home without you.
Oh,
It's,
okay, yeah.
It's Every Breath You Take. Just listen to it and then.
I think I have seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's the piano shots, the tempo. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's when you're gonna rip off, just do it right. Yeah. And he did great. And there's a charm to the first Maroon 5 record because I don't think they had any expectations.
Yeah.
And that's part of my problem with Adam Levine all around is he was cooler when he didn't know he was cool because he's really just an acne-faced freaking loser from LA, but now he's like Mr. Sex Symbol and pop star, and he's still talented, but
he's a great singer.
There was a charm to when he was hungry for making it, and then once he made it, he kind of lost his edge a little bit. But
there's that, like when they played at the Super Bowl and he played a gem. And everybody was ripping on him. But I'm glad Steve I took the best approach. He was like, guys, just back off. Like,
he's a good player. Yeah. You should just YouTube Back to Stern one more time. The Howard Stern birthday bash when Howard turned 60. Adam did Purple Rain.
Oh, okay.
With Pat Monahan singing some harms.
Oh wow, that's that's my two guys right there.
The two newer vocalists.
Because I always, whenever I think of like bands that went to music that I didn't like, I usually think of Train and Maroon 5.
Exactly. There's a point where they this is what we'd call another Stern reference jump. They jumped the shark, right? So they that's a Happy Days thing. But they were good, but they had to jump the shark in order to maintain relevance.
Okay.
It's either that or you just tap out. Like that's what Matchbox 20 did. They just Rob went solo, and that way he could kind of monkey around with other genres and try and stay relevant. But then when they come back to Matchbox 20, it's kind of old school, just rave up. Whereas Maroon 5 kept the name and kept going and still having hits. And but like they lost me at Hands All Over, right? Like what was the one after that? I can't remember.
I mean, I liked the song Misery.
Yeah, that was on Hansel Lower, I think. Yeah, the first 3 or maybe 4 records were good.
Because I remember when Misery came out.
Yeah.
Or if it was out before, then it was really popular.
Was that 2012 or 2010 ish? I think.
2012. I was in Y school still. I think. Yeah. So young, like. Yeah.
Yeah, 2010 probably. Yeah, something in there. And then what? California 37 for Train, probably, right? Would that be the last one? Yeah.
Or Save Me San Francisco, maybe.
Well, that was technically probably the best of. And then I think California 37 was pretty good, but then after that it was like
because Save Me San Francisco, I'm honestly not a big fan of Hazel's sister.
Well, I'm sick of it. Yeah,
that might even just be it.
I don't need to hear it again. But think about the uniqueness of that song. Like if you want to dissect that a bit, right?
Yeah,
ukulele for most of the song, no drums, no nothing.
Yeah,
all of a sudden the drums come in and the hook.
Yeah,
every little brat in town could sing that one.
Oh yeah,
along with Uptown Funk, of course.
Yeah,
which sadly is a really killer funk song.
Yeah, pretty catchy.
But they just stole everything from all the good funk bands. But that's from the '80s band. But that's thing. So compositions, funk.
Actually, I guess we'll probably have to wrap up soon. But
we did 45 minutes on Glenn Gould. I think I had 20 minutes in my head. So.
The typical This Road Was Mine formulas use it as a platform to go as far away as possible.
Yeah, there's nothing more jazz than that, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but video game soundtracks.
Right. Actually, I was going to bring that up
because Steven Wilson
is he composed
video games.
Oh, really? Well, like for what? What does he do?
There's one game on the PS4 I want to get. Very dark games, but he does the soundtracks. Yeah, you can look them up. They're really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, those. I kind of missed that. Like, video games for me were a small part of my. Like, I had a Nintendo like everyone else, but actually, and then I went to Sega, and that was it. But, I think that the music got better on video games once the technology caught up, right? It's because they had more data to actually hold like MIDI tracks that could actually. Yeah. So the Super Mario Brothers one is kind of like all those different songs they're fun, whatever. But apparently, like I think it was Zelda that was sort of the turning point for everyone.
I mean, it's kind of a normie video game soundtrack, but it's for a good reason. It's gorgeous stuff.
It's supposed to be. Yeah, I never played the game even. I know of it. I just it's just not.
Yeah, and it's there's just so many good songs from that. Like there's the Song of Storms and Gerudo Valley is one of my favorite.
They had names, but everyone found them out after. Like they wouldn't have been in the game, would they? Or
well, so the songs would be, I guess they would just be coded to load when you enter a certain area.
Yeah.
So then the names, I guess the names would have just come with the location. So like Gerudo Valley was when you go to Gerudo Valley.
Okay.
Song of Storms, it was actually called Song of Storms because in Ocarina of Time, the thing is you have an ocarina, and you can go back in time. It's actually really cool commentary and narrative in the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask is super dark games.
Okay.
Very. I mean, fun for kids, but when you play them as a grown-up, you realize they're really dark.
Yeah, I love that.
Which makes it even better, yeah. The Donkey Kong soundtracks are killer.
So that was before Mario, right? Or are we talking like Donkey Kong Country and
Donkey Kong on 64, I think.
Okay. Is it the same composer as the one that did the Mario stuff?
Different, yeah. He did the game. It was like a kind of like a Crash Bandicoot knockoff. Layla, I think, and Ukulele, or I think it was called. But yeah, the Donkey Kong stuff's amazing.
Nice.
There's that game Undertale, has amazing music.
Okay. And I'm a fan of the Sonic one. Sorry.
I love the and the load up menu.
Yeah.
That and I mentioned to you there's a boss battle in Sonic, Solaris, I think it's called.
Okay.
And to me it sounds like Tonight by Smashing Pumpkins. If whoever's listening, I mean, this really excites me.
Interesting.
Listen to Tonight by Smashing Pumpkins, then look up the Solaris Sonic boss battle. You'll find it, and I think I played it for you. And
I think.
Yeah, and another one actually is Rough Boy by ZZ Top. This is stuck in my brain. Sounds like listen to Epona's song from Zelda.
Okay.
It's just like because I grew up with classic rock. I'm like,
sure,
that sounds like the song from this video game on my DS. And then you grow up and keep that in your head, and then you actually see why.
That's how similar they are. Yeah. Although like Rough Boy was probably before Zelda, I think, because Rough Boy was that on Afterburner.
Yes, Afterburner. Yeah, I don't know when that was.
Yeah, that was 85, I think.
Oh yeah, then because Ocarina of Time.
But
was on 64.
Tonight by Smashing Pumpkins would have been probably after the Sonic one.
Well, the Sonic one was from a newer one, I think.
Oh, okay.
So when was the Smashing Pumpkins one?
96.
I'm pretty sure it was a 3D Sonic one then.
Okay.
But
yeah, it's crazy.
And I don't think it was intentional.
Well, 12 notes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
12 notes and the truth.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, there's less. So yeah, back to Glenn Gould just for a sec. So yeah, you've got the 1955 version on vinyl here. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you're digging it. And then I guess for maybe your graduation or for Christmas, you'll have to get the one that he did right before he died.
I'd like to.
I think it's almost like he had something to prove. I don't know. I got to do a little more reading on it, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do looking into him.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the difference would be, and maybe do a deep dive study or something.
Does he have his original compositions, or was he just interpreter?
I assumed he was an interpreter only, but because I know, at least in my early looking into of him, it was all like Mozart variations and Derby Derby variations. Like, so I don't know what else he ended up doing. And that could be common in that world. I actually don't know.
Yeah.
Like maybe when you're an interpreter, that's sort of your forte.
And I suppose that being an interpreter would also allow for some creative interpretation. So
totally, yeah.
And it's hard to, I guess unless you're listening to it and looking at the original pieces of music, which I don't even know if those exist.
Well, there would be no recordings of it.
Exactly.
But
except the transcriptions on paper.
Right.
Because we have to hear it somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Just like Songwriter by Beck. Remember I told you about the...
Yes, that's so cool.
It was pretty sure it was the first album ever written and not recorded.
So smart.
Yeah. And of course his dad still does a lot of work in LA.
Yeah.
So yeah. Beck Hansen.
Yeah.
That's his name. Hard to believe, but
yeah.
Okay, well, that was another fine edition of This Road Is Mine. Thanks, Cohen. My name is KARAC HENDRIKS. Peace out.